Good evening. I'm Mark Ivy. Welcome to the latest edition of Kernels from the Cornfield. No husk, no hulls, no shucks. News with a dash of commentary to spice up your fare for Thursday, May 29th, 2014. Standing on a sinkhole? The Ground Around Veterans Affairs Secretary Eric Shinseki is crumbling by the moment. More than a dozen Democratic members of the U.S. House of Representatives and of the U.S. Senate are now joining calls from Republican lawmakers that Shinseki be fired. This outcry is growing, even though House Speaker John Boehner today seemed to want to allow Shinseki more time to fix what is apparent to everyone now, a scandal engulfing the entire VA medical system. With now 42 VA medical centers under investigation and the revelation of 1,700 veterans who thought they had an appointment and were waiting to be seen, in reality were not on any waiting list. Even officials out of the White House are insinuating that Shinseki is on thin ice. As I mentioned yesterday, whether it is Shinseki's or someone else, we owe it to our veterans for someone to take control of the worsening situation and act now to fix the problem. If heads must roll to wake up the stubborn, so be it. Foreign policy? Read my thoughts about President Barack Obama's speech at the West Point Military Academy commencement on Wednesday at FromTheCornfield.com. Dud. Foreign policy speech lands with a thud. Taking from Peter to pay Paul. Check out my article on an unintended consequence of the Affordable Care Act hitting seniors and those on disability this Sunday. You can read all about it at FromTheCornfield.com. Malaysian Flight 370. Anger and questions are increasing over what is now seen as wasted time and energy searching in the wrong place for the flight which went missing with its passengers and crew about 2 months ago. Apparently somewhere in the Indian Ocean region. A new search is not expected to begin for 2 to 4 months. California carnage. Since the tragic mass shooting in California Friday night by a lone man wielding knives, guns, and his vehicle to wreak death and mayhem on unsuspecting victims, discussion has turned to mental health and mental illness. Read Castaway Stigma and Mental Illness at FromTheCornfield.com with my take on mental illness and mass violence. Enough already! The circus surrounding the NBA, Donald and Shelley Sterling, will just not pack up and move to another town. How many times can we watch these clowns climbing in and out of a tiny car before we say enough? If this spectacle were actually producing some good in race relations, greater understanding of our differences, and how to get along, it may be newsworthy. But this petty, childlike bickering consuming the airwaves is turning into a noxious gas instead, which I find sickening. Then again, I'm not a big sports nut. Perhaps that is the problem, and lack of understanding the real-life impact of this story. Too high a cost? Is the cost today for more stringent environmental controls too high for a brighter future? Tomorrow. Looking at a report commissioned by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce to study the effects of new environmental protection regulations expected to be released shortly by the administration, you have to take a seat and wonder if the cost outweighs the benefits or the benefits outdistance the cost. According to that study, the impact on the Cornfield, which is part of the East North Central region, including Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Ohio, will amount to 32,000 jobs lost each year until 2030, and an economic loss of $7.4 billion per year until 2030. That is just for this region. For the nation as a whole, the number of lost jobs will be 224,000, with an economic cost of $51 billion. You tell me, is the cost too high? Read the full study at energyxxi.org. According to the study, the president's goal is reduction of carbon emissions by 42% by 2030. The study's assessment is the reduction will amount to less than 2% globally and will fall short of the White House goal nationally. Well, that's what caught my attention for Thursday, May 29th, 2014. Tune in tomorrow for another episode of Kernels from the Cornfield. I am Mark Ivy. Good evening.